Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. I'm Chris. When I was introduced, I first talked about my channel wanting to be about inspiration, motivation, and positivity. Today's inspiration is going to come from my grandma. My grandma taught me two of the most important things in life: faith in God and food, specifically meatballs. So today I'm going to show her meatball recipe as a tribute to her. Are you ready to see this? Because I am. Let's get this done. Okay everybody, so let's get this started. Go over the ingredients, things to make the meatballs here. Got my bowl for mixing up my ground chuck and my ground pork. So I just bought a pound of each. I'm only going to use a quarter pound of the ground up pork, but then I'm going to use the full pound of the ground chuck. Also have a little bit of sea salt, Maull's barbecue sauce, sweet and mild, and Mrs. Dash original seasoning blend. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and get the ground chuck out here. I'm going to put the whole pound in here. I'm only going to use, like I said, about a quarter pound of the pork. And so what I want to do is to make sure that I don't put too much of the pork in any one section of the beef. I kind of mix up the beef so that it's in smaller pieces. So that way, when I blend it together, it's going to be more uniform across all of the beef. And I kind of smooth it out there, mix it around. Really sort of like kneading it. And then I'll start making the individual meatballs. Okay, I think I got it blended through pretty well here. As you can see, I've kind of moved the pork all throughout the beef, so it's dispersed here. So let's go ahead and start making the meatballs. Okay, now I'm just going to take a little bit at a time and start making the meatballs. So, Grandma always said to make them small, so it's easier for the little kids to eat them. So I make them pretty tiny. You can make them whatever size you'd like. I'm just using this other blue bowl over here to put those in there before I put them in the skillet. Also, I'm making them pretty small too. Will allow them to cook through pretty quickly. And also I would say, you know, they don't have to be perfect. At the very end, we're gonna simmer them in the barbecue sauce. So they'll get really soft there too. And the whole point of the pork blend with the beef is to kind of soften them up. Sometimes you'll see pork blended with beef for burgers. So just using that concept here for the meatballs. Okay, so now we have our meatballs here, ready to go into our skillet. Got my sea salt and I've got my Mrs. Dash ready to go. Just so you know, it took around 8.5 minutes to roll those. And I get, with that amount of beef and pork combined, get around 100 meatballs, give or take some. So let's go ahead and toss them in and we'll get them going. Now I generally like to put my burner on about medium. I don't want to put it too high. If they were to get a little overdone, that's not the end of the world, because you can eventually put those over into the crock pot and they'll soften up a little bit too with the barbecue sauce. So my recommendation is to not necessarily put it on really high. Just make sure you're turning them a lot. So we're going to go ahead and give them a little bit of salt. And a little bit of the Mrs. Dash. Comes out pretty quick, so you don't need a ton. And if you can see, they're already starting to brown up a little bit. So again, like I mentioned, with them being small, they'll cook through quickly, which is nice if you're in a time crunch. Okay, so as you can see here, my meatballs are cooked through. There's really not any pink left there. And I don't like to overdo them too much too, because again, they'll cook some here in a minute. I'm going to put them into the crock pot for a while. So I think these are good. So now let's just drain the fat off of them and we'll move them over. Okay, so now what we're going to do here is we're going to drain the fat off the meatballs. I like to use this strainer here, and then I've got some foil inside that blue bowl. Again, trying not to use another dish that I'll have to clean later. So I use that blue bowl that I originally put the meatballs in, put some foil in it, because then I can wrap up all of the grease and the fat that goes in there and then toss that in the trash. Another way I've seen people do it is you can put your foil into the sink where your garbage disposal, and then pour the fat into there, and then wrap up your fat all into a ball there, and then you can throw that away. Because of course you don't want to throw it down your garbage disposal, because that will eventually clog up if you put tons of grease down there. It's just not good for it. So let's go ahead and get this dumped. Okay, so I'm going to give them a minute to let all of that fat drip off, and then we're going to move them over to the crock pot. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my meatballs into the crock pot here. And I'm going to put basically the entire bottle of Maull's barbecue sauce, because I want that to simmer, get all the flavors, let the Mrs. Dash, the sea salt, and the flavors of the barbecue sauce run all together. And that's going to sit for about 2 to 3 hours, and just let them soften up again with that pork and the beef blend, plus in the barbecue sauce, kind of marinate them a little bit, and then they'll be ready to enjoy. Okay, so here we go. We're going to pour it in. I'll show you here in a second. It pretty much covers all of those just about perfectly with one bottle. And this bottle is a 24 ounce. And you can see there, they're all covered up. So now I have my crock pot on low for about 2 to 3 hours. I hope you enjoyed the recipe today. And if you have any other recipes, we'd love to hear about them. Please let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe if you'd like to see more videos. Thanks again for joining, and we'll see you next time.